Well, the problem is someone has access to a big red button and can change whatever they want about the money whenever they want. And that's a problem for all of humanity, and it's the biggest problem we have.
Isn't it crazy? The US dollar is the world reserve currency, and the Federal Reserve is this private institution, privately owned, and they dictate what happens for the whole entire globe. How does that make any sense?
The only source of inflation is the money printer. That's it. The natural course of human action in a free market is that prices go down and quality goes up. You can weaponize it. You can make it expire. You can restrict what you can or cannot spend it, and you destroy the fungibility of the money, which we all take for granted.
Then they bring out social credit scores, and then we're absolutely I think people have got 3 years to get Bitcoin into self-custody at the very most. People with Bitcoin are the only ones that are going to have any sense of freedom or control over their own lives.
The TLDR is, it's all broken, but we have the solution.
Welcome back to G'day Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen. Third Take Lucky. Today on the show, we have Joe and Bryan joining us from What is the Problem? You should have already seen it, but I'll link it in the description. Joe, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Sure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, mate. We got there in the end. I was a little bit tongue-twisted. We are filming this at block height 921,298. The Bitcoin price in fiatellos is $113,369. We do have a nice 69 at the moment. Sats per USD is 882. Joe, what is the problem?
Well, the problem is someone has access to a big red button and can change whatever they want about the money whenever they want.
And why is that a problem
for all of humanity? And it's the biggest problem we have.
Isn't it crazy that like the Federal Reserve is sort of the US dollar is the world reserve currency, and the Federal Reserve is this private institution, privately owned, and they dictate what happens for the whole entire globe? How does that make any sense?
Well, I mean, there's a famous saying like you judge the purpose of a system by the outcome.
And what is that outcome? Control?
Yeah, absolutely. Control and theft of everything. You have the system is set up so that somebody has exorbitant privilege in the system over everybody else. And whenever you have a system where somebody has that unilateral benefit, they use it. And they use it and they use it until they destroy everything, until they've taken everything. This is how the system is designed. I mean, it's fundamentally flawed at the very heart of everything. And if you build something on foundations which don't work, it collapses. Maybe it doesn't collapse on the first day you put it up, or the 1,000th day, or the 100,000th day. Right? But it collapses because fundamentally the system is broken. And so it will collapse under its own weight. And this is where we're heading to. I mean, you've got a system where it is structurally built on theft. And I'm not talking about theft in terms of taxes, and different people have different views on the level of insane taxation we have now across different parts of the world. But that's not the theft I'm talking about. The theft I'm talking about is the debasement of the money we use. And then you combine the theft with having zero actual control over your own money. It's a dystopian prison that we all live in, just most people don't realize. And it's about to get a whole lot worse. And so, that's probably a fairly depressing first 2 minutes to a podcast. But we can work through and pull that apart. But the TLDR is, it's all broken, but we have the solution. And so everyone should be super, super positive. It's just not enough people know about the solution. But everyone can unilaterally adopt the solution. So the future is very bright. We're just going through some dark times right now.
Yeah. And obviously the reason we're talking is TLDR. Bitcoin is that solution. We'll dive into that in depth. But I do want to stay, sorry, audience, with the dystopian thread for just a little bit longer. But you said the theft, it's not from tax, but it's from the debasement of the currency. So everyone around the world is feeling inflation. Electricity has gone up in this country about 9% just this year alone. Gas prices, food, housing, like everything. cars, like anything you can name, costs more now than it did last year, and let alone 5 years ago. And I think people have really started to wake up since 2020 with COVID, the pandemic or the plandemic, whatever way you want to see it, where they shut the world down. They printed a whole lot of money. People like, especially in Australia, they're like, the grocery stores, like the supermarkets, they're just jacking up their prices. These evil capitalist pigs, and they're just like ripping everyone off. And the media goes with that line. But then they want to talk about bringing in price controls and things like that. Maybe they're jacking them up a tiny little bit more than inflation. Like, I very much doubt it. The inflation is huge. The CPI numbers like totally made up.
Yeah.
So what is the real issue? Like, what is debasement, and what's actually caused inflation in people's lives? Because it's not the greedy grocers or the business people. They're simply just passing on the costs that have been passed on to them.
Yeah. That's simply the only source of inflation is the money printer. That's it. The natural course of human action in a free market is that prices go down and quality goes up. And this is just so blindingly obvious. It's just, we live in a world which is 180 degrees the other way around, and we've never questioned it.
Yep. Well, I just want to, just on this topic, it's blindly obvious to us. You know, we've read books like What's the Price of Tomorrow? You know, so we understand that over time, as technology improves, things that should be easier and cheaper to be able to export out of there or to be able to build. And along with that, because of the competition and market, the quality should also go up. But for anyone that hasn't read a book like The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth, or maybe not into Bitcoin or gold before Bitcoin or precious metals, that may not be so obvious to them. So I was just wondering if you could break that down a little bit more.
I could run through in 60 seconds. So if you've watched What's the Problem, Jeff's wonderful book, The Price of Tomorrow, I've bastardized it completely down to like 1 minute on a slide about how the people on the island start rebuilding.
Yeah.
And it's a really poor man's job of a wonderful book, so you should go and read the book. But the core thing is, when you leave people alone and you give them good money and they're allowed to operate freely, they specialize and they compete. And when you specialize, you become better at what you're doing. You drop the things you're not good at, you focus on the things you are good at. And because you're better at them than the average person, your ability to produce goes up. So your quantity you can produce in a certain amount of time increases. So prices begin to fall. And the quality goes up because you're better at it. So quality goes up, but there's lots of people doing the same thing as you, and they're all competing with you. And because you're specialized, you need to trade with everybody else, because whatever it is you're producing, you can't survive on that alone. So you have to exchange it for money to go and buy something else, right? And so you have trade in a free market where people are specialized, they compete, the prices start to fall and quality starts to go up, because everybody's making a decision about what they buy from everyone else on the combination. I want the highest quality at the lowest price. If you give me lower quality at a higher price, I don't buy from you, you go bust. You get outcompeted. And so in a free market with perfect money, prices go down forever and quality goes up forever. Super simple. That's so blindingly obvious, right? When you're like, of course that's the case. Capitalism is what happens when you just leave people alone. Okay, and the benefit of that system accrues to everybody in the system. So imagine you're in that little world, but you can't work for whatever reason, right? But you have a small amount of savings. The fact that prices fall and quality goes up means your money is becoming more valuable over time, not less valuable, right? So you're benefiting, you're saving. You don't even need to earn any interest. The purchasing power of your money is going up over time because you're benefiting from the productivity of everybody else. It's accruing to the money. This is exactly how money should be working. So good money in a free market raises the quality of life for everybody. Full stop. So why the hell are we in the situation we're in today? Right? Prices constantly go up. Prices constantly go up in the fiat world. And quality deteriorates. It's like something's broken. Something's broken. And it's the money. the money is broken. And so the money being corruptible in the first instance starts with money printing by the government, which leads to ultimately a swelling of the government, a destruction of the free market, and we can dig into these, destruction of the free market, which causes more societal problems, which means the government needs to spend more money into the market trying to fix the problems it's created, which exacerbates the problems and centralizes the economy greater and greater extent around the government. So it destroys the free market by printing money and then solves it by printing more money, which faster destroys the free market. And the government has to get more and more involved in everything, and even gets pushed to be involved by some sectors who benefit from the money printer, those closest to the government, like the defense sector or the pharmaceutical industry or the banking sector. They push to be regulated. You've got to protect the public. But that reduces competition for them. It puts up barriers to competition so they can now charge more to the government and reduce the quality. And the government then mandates their services to the population or underwrites them if they require a bailout. It's just socialism. And that's why you have prices going up. So, the government prints money. It then has to spend this money in the economy. It spends the money in the economy with the people closest to the government. So it comes in, those extra fiatellos, or Aussie dollars, right? They look like demand. They're not demand, it's just extra Aussie dollars. So the people receiving them start to see prices going up, become more profitable, closer to the government. And then so people in the rest of the economy go, well, why am I competing over there? There's greater profit margin to play for by being closer to the government. I'll stop what I'm doing. I'll go and work in the banking sector. Right? So you get this drain of productive people and productive capital in the rest of the economy. They all get sucked closer to the government. Right? So the first recipients of the money then get to buy assets, and they also then spend that on inputs that everybody uses. So they start hiring people, they spend on energy, all these things, which then is just extra Aussie dollars going through the rest of the economy. So to your point, it's like the food shops, they now see their input costs going up. They didn't receive any money from the government, but they're on the receiving end of the consequences of the government printing the money, because it pushes all their input costs up. And if you're running a business, you have to balance the risk reward of running the business. Running a business is stressful. Like, you're on the hook for it. You're on the hook for it. So there has to be a sufficient reward for you to even spend the time trying to build the business, employ people, make a profit. And if the expected profit reduces, you just give up. You just say, I'm going to close the business. I go work for someone else. They can take that risk, right? So you start to see businesses closing, or they have to go, okay, well, I need to reestablish my profit margin because it's been eroded because the government printed a load of money. So how do I do that? And this is where consumer inflation comes from, right? The vast majority of consumer inflation that isn't input driven is people reacting to the fact that the inputs have gone up because the government printed money. And so every business has a choice between three things, right? And you'll recognize all of them.
If you've still got your Bitcoin on an exchange, or you're looking to take your Bitcoin security to the next level, I've partnered with the Bitcoin Way. They offer live help for setting up cold storage, running your own node, keeping your Bitcoin private, planning for the future, using multi-sig, and so much more. They never touch your keys. They will not touch your coins. Instead, they'll show you how to buy and keep them safe. If you want to make your Bitcoin setup safer, you can book a free 30-minute call and have a chat with them. Safedina Moose, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, Natalie Brunel, Preston Pish, and so many more recommend the professional IT cybersecurity team. Couple of outstanding things here. You can see they've been featured in Forbes, Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin Prague, Zero Hedge, Simply Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Safedina, the Bitcoin Standard podcast with Safedina Moose, Bitcoin News, obviously Gday Bitcoin for a long time. They're the world experts in helping people become self-sovereign. It's not just about protecting your Bitcoin stash. Yes, they will help you do that in a very easy to understand step-by-step process. But from there, they can help you secure your data. They are your personal cybersecurity IT experts. And then step number 3, is getting a second passport, a Plan B residency. The team, very cheap, very affordable for people that are looking to take their sovereignty to the next level. You can find out more about their services. When you first log in to their website as well, they have got a free 3-minute quiz to allow you to check if you are doing your cybersecurity, your setup correctly. I urge everyone to jump onto the bitcoinway.com. I have put a link into the description for everyone. Could not recommend them enough. I've used them personally before I ever partnered with them for the channel, friends and family. They asked me to help them out. I'm like, go to the world experts. That is the Bitcoin way. So reach out to the Bitcoin way today.
The first one is like, you manage a manufactured product, right? It's like, well, it now costs more to make, so we'll just pass on the price increase to the customer. It now costs 10% more. So it's same size, same quality, just price gone up. And that's what people would talk about, or the government would talk about, is inflation, consumer inflation. It's 1/3 of the picture, because you have the option of not putting the price up. You could instead redesign the packet and make it 10% smaller and charge the same price. So same price, same quality, is now just smaller. And this is shrinkflation, and we see it everywhere. Often it's with a redesigned package, so you're not even sure, like, it doesn't look the same as it did before, so it's hidden from you, right? But I would term that semi-visible inflation. It's like sometimes we notice it and sometimes we don't. But that's not in the inflation statistics. And then the third one is you go, well, I'll keep it the same size and the same price. I'll just find a way to make it more cheaply. And every business is already trying to do that anyway.
Yeah.
This is what business is. It's like you're trying to be the most efficient business you can, but you're doing that against a backdrop of the combination of quality and price. If you get to the point where you need to reduce your input costs, you have to compromise on quality. And you do that in two ways. Like, you either just fire people, and so now you can't get anyone on the phone when you try and call and talk to somebody about a product or a service. It's like, there's just no one there. That's the easiest way. But the worst way for society is that you compromise on the quality itself.
Yeah.
And so you say, well, the product, I'm now going to use worse components to build the product. So as previously someone would have bought it and it lasts for 2 years before it needs to be replaced, it now only lasts for 1 year. There's still inflation. It's inflation through time. Like, I've got to buy it twice over 2 years rather than buy it once. Not in the inflation statistics, right? So it's like the decline in quality. But then that's from a mechanical perspective, like a product perspective. But if you think about some things where you only get to use them once, like food.
Well, I want to bring up the food because in What's the Problem, you use that as an example. And I truly believe we are what we eat. And I believe we can pay as much attention to Bitcoin as we want and we can get as wealthy as we want. But if we lose our health in the process, like, what's the point? What's the point of doing that? And I think one of the greatest drivers for our long-term health is what we just literally put into our mouth. And the decline in food since I was a kid, or even in recent years, like, I walk into the supermarket and there's sort of the fruit at the start, the meat and the milk and the eggs at the end. And they're the only aisles I go to, and the water aisle. And that's it. And then there's like 30 aisles in between that to me just look like toxic garbage. But I guess, like, how'd we get here? And like, how's that come about? Because in What's the Problem, you really laid it out real well.
Well, there's a couple of things. The first is that inflation pressure. So if your production costs go up because there's just more Aussie dollars in the system, then you end up compromising on the inputs. So you reduce the quality. And so your fresh ingredients are increasingly replaced with industrialized sludge to keep the costs down. It maybe even tastes better at the same time. But you don't really notice it necessarily on day one. This is why we have obesity crisis. It's like we're consuming stuff we should never be consuming.
Yeah.
And it's directly a result of the money printer. Right. And the second impact is that because of the money printer, the the businesses have to put up costs, but the people who are struggling the most in society, who are on low wages, their wages are going up less than the rate at which the cost of living is going up. And the full cost of living. It's like the visible, the semi-visible, and the hidden inflation, right? That's eating away at them, 3 different aspects, which is way, way, way above the rate at which their earnings are going up. So every year they're having to make compromises. And so the compromises is like, we need to move further and further down the quality curve of our decisions in the food we eat, because we can't make the economics balance anymore. So not only is the food deteriorating quality, people are getting forced down the quality curve as well. They're having to buy crappier and crappier food. And the food itself is crappier and crappier, right? So it's like a race to the bottom from 2 different directions, which just exacerbates the health crisis. It's all because the money is broken. It's absolutely bonkers. And then
It's so crazy.
Undermines productivity. Now everyone is like unhealthy, chronic illness, obese. Does that make us more or less productive? Absolutely makes us less productive. So it's the big red button destroys the free market and then destroys everything else. And there is no stopping it. There is no stopping it from within the system, because the only resolution you have to any of these problems is just to print more money, right? And then once you've done it once, you can never stop. You can never stop, because the system itself becomes so indebted through the incentives that fall out of pressing the big red button. The ultimate release valve is just the currency. Just the currency. So for example, when you're printing money, you have all these visible, semi-visible, and hidden effects through inflation. But then think about the people who are working in that system. Like, they go out and they do a day's work and they try and save some portion of that as money for another day, right? Savings for the future. But those savings are being debased as well. So by printing more Aussie dollars, the Aussie dollars I've saved are going to buy less in a year's time than they would today. And so I can't save in the system. So I'm being crunched from the cost of living, and there's no way for me to accrue enough capital without speculating with it to escape this constant crushing, right? And so you have to speculate with it. You have to speculate to try and get out. So you take more leverage, or you say, I'm never going to get out of it, so I'm just going to spend it. What's the point of saving? And then so you end up having a destructive lifestyle. Like, there's no sense for a lot of people of planning for the long term. There's no short-term sacrifice for the long-term benefit. Like, people think, well, I'm never going to be able to buy a house. So what's the point? What's the point of saving? It just twists the whole mindset of humanity, right? And just destroys everything faster. And I've got one example here, Sean, I was trying to think about ways to explain this in like the simplest possible form to help people have the penny drop. And like, imagine I said to you, I'll give you $1,000 now, and you keep it in the bank for 10 years. Probably worth half in 10 years.
Yeah.
Probably purchasing power. Right. So are you going to leave it in the bank for 10 years? No, right? You're going to do something else with it, right? You're going to spend it on something, whether it's an investment or spend it outright, because it's going to disappear. If I said it's going to halve in 1 year, or halve in 1 month, or 1 week, or 1 day, or 1 hour, is your decision making improving or deteriorating as I shorten the time frame?
Deteriorating
massively.
Yeah.
So you're going to spend your money, you're going to be forced to spend it and make bad decisions, and worse decisions the faster the money is deteriorating. It's crazy. What if instead I said, I give it to you and you can keep it for 10 years and it'll be worth 10% more? You now don't have to spend it. It's just the mindset is completely different. It's like you actually now think about the long term. You're not trying to rush to get rid of something. You plan, like, you're not under the pressure. You'll still buy the things you need. You'll still make investments, but now the investment is based on a clear expected return. You know you're going to get 10% anyway. So I'm only going to invest in things where the expected return is better than that. Whereas if I'm losing 50% over 10 years, if I invest in something that only loses 20%, then that's a good investment. It's not a good investment at all. You're still destroying capital.
Yeah.
You're losing. And so, in a world where we have money, where the purchasing power goes up, it just washes away everything. It washes away short-termism, washes away bad decisions. Well, large parts of bad decisions. People always make bad decisions, but large parts of bad decisions. And it will defund stuff that should never be funded. And so the quality of decision-making, the quality of investment will go up. And then you think about the benefits of that after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, the compounding effect of making better decisions and higher quality investments, and how that then accrues to the money. It fixes everything. It fixes everything. And this is just like a simple thought experiment, which we all experience. It's nothing to do with Bitcoin. Nothing to do with Bitcoin. This is just showing the money is broken and showing how it corrupts everything for everybody. It's like so obvious.
It is very obvious. That note, like this pivot point would be great to pivot into Bitcoin and the solution, but we're not going to just yet. We will get to it. Yeah, I want to just stay with the dystopian thread for a while. And I guess maybe for a little bit of context is I find it very easy to be able to talk about all these things because we have the solution. We live the solution. We breathe the solution. We talk about the solution. We have integrated the solution into our being, into our life, or whatever way you want to take it. So it's great. But imagine just as a thought experiment, knowing everything we know about the fiat system, fiat telos, inflation, the destruction, the control, and we didn't have Bitcoin.
It's a disaster.
I think I'd be mad, in jail, or dead. Just
yeah.
Oh,
that's where we would all end up. Without, I mean, make no mistake, we are rapidly going off a cliff.
It's how do you feel for like your friends and family that don't yet understand Bitcoin?
For people to have the penny drop moment, they need to be in the right place at the right time and hear it from the right source.
Do you think they have enough time though? Like where I want to take this conversation is digital IDs, CBDCs in both the UK and Australia. Like they're really pushing digital IDs at the moment. Digital IDs in and of themselves, it is what it is. Like I don't see that the issue. What I see the issue and where they become very, very dystopian is once they have digital IDs, then they bring out CBDCs. Still maybe not an issue, at least not straight away. But once they have digital IDs and then CBDCs, then they bring out social credit scores, and then we're absolutely fucked. And they're pushing digital IDs, I think, this year in the UK at the moment, and Australia as well, 10th of December. So I think people have got 3 years to get Bitcoin into self-custody at the very most, in my opinion, at least coming from an Australian perspective, from what I can see. If I'm wrong, who cares? Bitcoin's number go up. Everyone gets super wealthy and stuff. If I am right, or I'm half right, people with Bitcoin are the only ones that are going to have any sense of freedom or control over their own lives. So when it comes to like your friends and your family, yes, it's only going to happen when the penny drops, but do they have enough time for that penny to drop? Because once it's too late, it's too late.
Yeah, and this is why we need to get as many people as possible around the world to watch What's the Problem, because you can't watch it and not
want to share
understand what is happening. It is when it's laid out in such an easy step-by-step fashion, you don't forget it because it's a story. Like humans don't forget stories. And so once you see it, you can't unsee it again, but just not enough people have seen it. You can't make somebody do something, Sean, when they've seen it. But getting them to see it means you've taken them to the starting line, and the decisions from that point are on them. But yeah, I agree with you. But I would maybe even go a bit further and say like digital IDs is the thing. The others will come as soon as we have digital IDs. Digital IDs is the line in the sand. It's a massive risk for humanity. A massive risk for humanity, because once you're inside that system, you can't escape.
Yeah.
Like there is.
Was it Thailand recently
with the bank
that implemented it? The digital IDs, people didn't get the digital IDs. They shut down those millions of bank accounts.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Thailand or another country in Asia. I can't remember, but it was one of them where there's 70 million bank accounts or something of that nature. But this is absolutely what's coming everywhere. And the fact that it's been floated in the UK and Australia and Canada and all these different places at the same time
Yeah.
should
All
be
at
very,
once.
very clear. And all with different reasons why it's good for the population.
Yeah.
If it's total nonsense, it is purely about control. Purely about control. And if these things come in, they, much like Fiatello in the video, they're just trying to patch the hole in the wall. That's all it is. They're trying to keep everybody trapped in the system. Because you stay in the system, you're fully controlled. You don't own anything in the system. You don't own the money in the banks. If you have money in the banks, you require the permission of the bank and the permission of the government to access the money. So it's not yours. Not yours at all. They'll tax you 50% on the way in. They'll then tax you through the 3 types of inflation. Then if you manage to accrue something and then accrue some value of some form, primarily because they're printing fiatellos, right? So the assets go up in price. As soon as you sell them, they then take another slug. And then when you die and try and pass it on to your children, they'll take that as well. There is no freedom here, and there is no escape. And you are one stroke of a pen away, as you know, with I think it's like superannuation stuff, like in Australia, one stroke of the pen just changes the rules. And so you're trying to build your life in a system where you don't even know the rules of the game, and they get changed against you constantly. And so, would you play a board game with someone where they could change the rules whenever they wanted? And how would you ever expect to win that game? You wouldn't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect to win, and when you played it for a certain real period of time, you'd realize that and you'd stop playing. And this is what is happening. People are stopping playing. This is why Bitcoin is clear rules for everybody, right?
Yeah.
You know that going in, and they're never going to change. And it's based on proof of work. It's energy. You can't fake it. So it is the truest system on the planet. And no wonder people are trying to go through the hole in the wall to leave Fiatello's side of the island and go to Satoshi's side of the island. This is the whole point of the digital IDs, is to allow them to keep everybody in. Because once the digital ID comes in, you're not going to be able to buy Satoshis anymore. They're going to put the central bank digital currency in because that has to have the digital ID first. And then not only is the money going to be stolen from you in the same way as it is, it's going to be actively weaponized against you. The money is not weaponized against us currently. It's just being stolen from us. But when you make the money programmable using CBDCs, you can weaponize it. You can make it expire. You can restrict what you can or cannot spend it on. You destroy the fungibility of the money, which we all take for granted. And the fungibility is that every Aussie dollar is the same as every other Aussie dollar. That disappears. That's the third leg of the stool that they destroy with central bank digital currencies. They can already print as much as they want. They can make, there's no sense of censorship resistant nature because you have to have multiple layers of permission to access your own money, and you can be separated at a flick of a switch. But they haven't been able to change the fungibility. The weaponization is the thing that is coming. And once you do these 3 things, everybody is trapped. You can no longer swap your fiatellos for Satoshis, right? The only way you're going to be able to get Satoshis in that world, if we end there, is by working for them. You will have to provide value to somebody who already has them and say, I'm only willing to work for the Satoshis. That's the only way to acquire them. You can't buy them. The assets you have are either tied to the ground, like the house, or they're held in custody for you by somebody else, like gold in a gold vault or shares on a share register in an institution. They're all permissioned, or they're all physically stuck. And so you can't take them anywhere. So you're physically trapped with no access to assets in a system where your daily life is being more and more controlled. And the social credit scores and carbon allowances, all of this stuff. Dystopian nightmare, absolute nightmare. This is where we're going. Anybody who's been on the fence about Bitcoin, get off the fence about Bitcoin and learn about it, because in 5 years' time, it's going to be the thing that saves you.
I agree. And just talking to the viewers watching for a moment, if you haven't seen What's the Problem, I've linked it. It's the first link just under the description, that first paragraph. Please watch it. But for a lot of yous watching, you're all legends, you understand Bitcoin and stuff. What's the Problem is the video that I hand out to people. I'm a reader myself, so I always recommend The Big Print by Lawrence Lepard. It's an incredible book followed up by Parallel, but not everyone's a reader. And unfortunately, I've come to understand that. I wish everyone would read. But What's the Problem, Joe? What you have done there is just a masterpiece. Like, as soon as I watched it, I don't know, maybe even 9 months ago when it came out, I messaged you straight away, and we've just been busy and haven't been able to connect. But it's profound. I just hand it out to people all the time. And like you were saying, it's a story. And I'm actually quite fond of Fiatello and Satoshi, but there's these two little characters that live in the head, and I'm like, that's amazing. It just sits with you, and it just makes it so easy to be able to comprehend. So, number one, if you haven't seen What's the Problem, please go watch What's the Problem. But more importantly, hand it on to friends, family as much as possible. And the other thing, just directly to the audience. Earlier, I played an ad for the Bitcoin Way. They help people with self-custody and stuff, but they also help people with Plan B passports. There are places around the world that aren't as dystopian as what potentially the UK and China, Australia are at the moment. Freudian slip, I'm sure. You can talk to people, and there are options, and especially on a Bitcoin standard. So I want to hard pivot into the solution, because it gets good really quickly. It gets amazing really quickly on Bitcoin. It doesn't take much. Within Bitcoin, they say it takes 100 hours to be able to understand it. I reckon if somebody watched What's the Problem, they read The Big Print, they read Parallel, and then they started to buy some and send it back and forth, I reckon within 20 hours, maybe 30, 40 hours it'd take to go through all that. But I reckon they'd know enough now. I think it used to be that case, or if people are just looking about and stuff, yes, it's going to take hundreds of hours plus. If people were just, What's the Problem, The Big Print, Parallel, I think that light bulb will go off. But that's still a lot of work. But as someone that has put in the work, and then you've been out, what I find so amazing, especially with What's the Problem, is I find it hard to be able to articulate Bitcoin, or to be able to break it down into a short, bite-sized piece. That video is 39 minutes, and you cover everything that people need to know to give them a really good grasp, which means to make something super simple, you understand the most complex part of it, so you understand at a very high level. What's been your Bitcoin journey? What led you here? You had 10 years in investment banking. You've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. You studied physics and something else at Oxford, I believe. So you're a very smart...
Just physics? I didn't have time for anything else.
Yeah. So you're incredibly smart, switched on. You're obviously providing value. To be an entrepreneur for 10 years, it's not easy, man. You're only getting compensated for the value providing, but then also understanding the investment world. How do you go sort of from traditional finance into Bitcoin, and what's that journey been like to understand it so deeply that you could make something that is so simple for the common person to be able to understand?
I'd had several touch points through the 2010s with Bitcoin, but I'd always dismissed it, Sean, as you do.
Me too.
Because you don't put the work in.
Do you remember the price?
Oh, I don't know. A lot lower than it is today. But you don't put the work in, because also the accessibility wasn't really there.
Yeah.
And as you're talking about now, you've gone from 100 hours to 20, 30 hours. Because we didn't have What's the Problem. We didn't have The Big Print. We didn't have Broken Money or The Price of Tomorrow or the Bitcoin Standard. And so the mental leap required for somebody to get to the point of that aha moment, there might actually be something worth spending more time on here, that was a bigger leap, and it was harder. But then it's just, it evolves through time. When Satoshi sent the email to the 100 or so cryptographers, the mental leap for them But for the rest of the world, if they just saw that email, it would be gargantuan, right? Because it's like just a technical white paper to then think about the implications for humanity. That's such a massive gap. And so over time, people in small segments where their skill set overlaps with the material being presented and their personality overlaps with the type of personality required to put in the effort and have the penny drop, they gradually make it more and more accessible over time by building more layers on top. And it's like any technological adoption curve. Understanding becomes easier through time. Things become more accessible. The user experience becomes better and better and better through iteration, learnings, failures. It's like the free market evolution of conveying an idea, right, and making it available to everybody. And we're just on that journey with Bitcoin. But when I come across it before, it was literally like the white paper and somebody telling me how great it was. And it was like, okay, at that point in my life, I had young children, a mortgage, worried about job security, just trying to get through the day, get home to my children. And like your mental space for something else just wasn't there, especially something that required a massive leap and a lot of reflection to have that penny drop moment. It wasn't there. And that, much like many people, you have a couple of touch points, you dismiss it, and then eventually you get humbled by it. Bitcoin humbles everyone because to have the penny drop is to acknowledge that you were wrong. That you were wrong either about Bitcoin or you were wrong about the way that you see the world. Not everybody can do that. Not everyone has the humility to say I was wrong. Especially if they've built a life or a career where a lot of their own self-worth is tied up in being aligned to the benefits of the big red button. Because to go to somebody and say, you've had a really successful career, but it wasn't really you. It was someone just smashing the big red button over there and you've just been close to it. That can be a hard message for some people, right? And so I think it goes some way to explain why the people who are closer to the big red button here are probably the hardest segment to get to the realization that Bitcoin is actually the thing that fixes the world and the most valuable thing in the world. Because they're incentivized not to understand that. But for me, I'd left the financial system. I'd left finance and moved into starting my own technology business way before I found Bitcoin properly and put the time in. That was 2020, like you said. They shut the world down and then they print tons of money and stock markets flying despite nothing working. And you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense at all.
None.
Someone's clearly printing loads of money. And then, because you get shaken out of your daily routine because you're all forced to be at home, like everything is up in the air. And it was a great time to be listening to more podcasts, doing more reading. And then I was worried. I was thinking, like, how we've got some savings. How am I going to stop them myself and my family being stolen from? Because they're just debasing everything. So I was like, looking at gold. And then I spent some time looking at Bitcoin, and then I sold all the gold.
Let's go.
Not Bitcoin. Yeah, because once you understand, like, there's nothing else to own.
That's right. Just talking, like dialing in or double clicking on gold. Peter Schiff, any Bitcoiner knows of him, any gold person knows of him. Been in Bitcoin for a little while, if you're just starting, you'll know of Peter Schiff pretty quickly. But basically, I was going to say gentleman, he's a man on X that sells gold, physical gold, and he was offered Bitcoin, I think at like 30 cents or whatever, and people have tried gifting him Bitcoin and things like that, and really like Max Kaiser and Stacey were trying to get him to buy at $1, and he never did, and he keeps pushing gold. But anyway, we know for a fact that his wife owns gold, so Peter can legally say that he doesn't own gold. His wife owns Bitcoin, and then Peter can say he doesn't own Bitcoin. Recently, he has come out and he's asking for donations in Bitcoin. But put that aside, he rails against Bitcoin so much. intellectually, I know that he understands Bitcoin. I've spoken to people that have podcasted with Peter, and as I say, after the show, he talks about how great Bitcoin and stuff is, but it's simply his brand, his messaging. When you're talking about someone that's close to the money printer or in this position, just his livelihood of selling gold for a profit, and so they don't want to know, or they want to seem ignorant, or they want to rail against it and put out these lies, misinformation, propaganda and stuff against the solution. Like, gold is no longer the solution. We live in a digital age, and I think starting a technology company and stuff, I'll hand it back over to you. If you can just talk into, once you see Bitcoin, you realize gold's no longer needed as money.
Yeah. Well, it never. Yeah. Well, that's
Never really
totally
worked.
true. I think Peter Schiff, I've never had the pleasure of speaking with him, but it very much seems like a branding positioning as opposed to anything else. But on the gold versus Bitcoin thing, many people haven't, and I'd never really thought about what makes good money. But the fact that we don't use gold on a day-to-day basis tells you it's not good money. It's not perfect money.
Yeah.
Because if it was good enough to be the money, we'd be using it as the money. But we don't. Because it's not good enough to be the money. It was good enough, it was the best money that we had. Because it outcompeted silver, it outcompeted copper, outcompeted beads, and all of these different things that have been used as money/currency around the world. And people eventually settled on gold as being the best asset that you could hold. And was made into coins, or partially made into coins, or stored in vaults, etc., etc. But that was before the digital age. But when people are trying to imagine we're using gold coins today as commerce. They're physical. You have to take them places. They're bulky. You can't tell whether it's real gold or not. Imagine a shopkeeper looking at a gold thing and thinking, like, what percentage gold is this? What percentage, tungsten wrapped with gold is it? I have absolutely no idea, right? They're all different sizes, different shapes. How do you pay for something? How do you get change in gold? Like how you buy an apple in gold.
Chop.
Like a little sprinkle of gold. And clearly it doesn't work. Clearly it doesn't work as money. You can't send it on the internet. Transporting it, you'd be worried. Like, carry around a bag of gold. Like, the amount of robberies and stuff. You know what I mean? It clearly doesn't work, right? But it was the best we had. And so what happens is, when you have gold, you go and put it in a gold vault because you're worried about securing it. You can't keep it at home. Or if someone breaks in and steals the gold, you put it in the gold vault, and the gold vault gives you a receipt for the gold. And then you use the receipts as the money because it's just easier. And then you can call, you can then transfer value at the speed of light over the phone, the telegraph, right? Because it's just numbers then. Nothing has to actually physically move. And it's just updating ledgers around the world. This is why we have the paper layer. Yeah, hopefully. But this is why we have the paper layer. This is why we have fiat currency today. Or the money we have today is because gold wasn't good enough. Right? So we had to have the paper layer on top to make it usable for commerce. And then over time, people never go and ask for the gold for which the receipts are exchangeable. Because why would you ask for the gold? It means you just have to look after it. You just keep the receipts. Everyone uses the receipts, and then decades go by, and the banks who hold the gold, they start making loans in the receipts. And then eventually the loans and the money printing, because paper doesn't cost anything to print, exceeds the gold in the vaults. And then something happens. People start to get worried that there's not enough gold in the vault, so they want to go and get the gold back out the vaults for the paper. And there's too much paper and not enough gold. And then they go, oh, sorry, no, we're breaking the convertibility. From now on, we're just going to use the paper.
Yeah.
We're not tied to gold anymore. And now we live in a fiat system. And so we all use bits of paper every day, and it's just monopoly money. It can be printed endlessly by the government because it's not connected to anything in the real world anymore. There's no physical world constraint on the production of money. If you're using gold as money, it's physically constrained by energy. Really inefficiently, but it's constrained by energy because you have to go and get the gold out the ground, process it, bring it into circulation. You can't just print gold. You have to expend real world energy to bring it into circulation. But with fiat, the paper layer, previously it was just printing press. Now it's just a click of a button because it's digital.
Yeah.
Right, just add a couple of zeros on with a click of a keyboard. So they can print for free what you have to go and work for, which is just morally, it was just wrong on every single level, right? As we've seen already. And so we're now in this world where we have fiat money, gold that sits there. There's no link between the two. And then Bitcoin comes along. And it is pure energy money. Bitcoin only comes into existence when you expend energy. And it's through a free market global process that anyone can participate in. The more energy that gets used in the mining of Bitcoin, it secures the ledger for everybody. And so Bitcoin is effectively the step after gold. Gold is inefficient energy money. Bitcoin is 100% efficient, perfect energy money. So it has the properties of gold taken to their natural conclusion, where it's instantly and costlessly verifiable by anybody, anywhere, at any time, the amount in existence, that you can send it over the internet at the speed of light at no cost. You can hold it yourself. You don't require someone else to hold it on your behalf. No one can stop you sending or receiving it. Nobody can prove you have it or don't have it. Nobody can take it off you unless you choose to give it to them. Every piece is always the same as every other piece. It's perfect money. And imagine if Bitcoin had come before the paper layer. So imagine Bitcoin had been able to compete with silver and gold, right? We would never have had a paper layer because there's no need for the paper layer. Because Bitcoin is the money and it's the currency. It is everything in one. You don't need anything else, right? It is the culmination of money. There is nothing that comes after it. There's nothing that comes after it. And everyone's going to get there. Everyone's going to understand. Like once you move to Bitcoin, there is just nothing else. And so it's that. I think, a lot of people struggle, especially when they're new to Bitcoin or before they've had the penny droppers, like why Bitcoin's even valuable. And it's a combination of things, but ultimately it's rooted in energy of the network, because you can't fake energy, right? And so when you work on a day, you go out and do a day's work, you're expending your economic energy and your contribution. You want to exchange that for something nobody can fake. And the only thing you can't fake is energy. So your money's got to be energy based.
So, Joe, as we're getting to the top of the hour here, the whole conversation we started off with, what is the problem? And on what is the problem, two things, as we discussed it, but also share what is the problem with your friends, family. The link is in the top of the description there for everyone. It's amazing. If you haven't watched it, you'll thoroughly enjoy it. It's one, if your wife or your partner's not interested in Bitcoin, it's a good one for them. I think you'll have more success than the average podcast out there, but it's just great. It's so accessible for everyone else. And then inflation, the money printing fiat is the problem. Then we started to talk about some of the dystopian things, digital IDs, CBDCs, and then we talked into why gold is no longer a good option, why it didn't really work as money and how Bitcoin's that solution. And money needs to be backed by energy, Bitcoin's being that energy money. It's a long conversation, Bitcoin, 39 minutes, and what's the problem? You've done a really good job. We've tried to cover a lot here, but I just want to hand over the microphone to you. If there's a final thought you'd like to round out the show or to be able to share with the audience that's top of mind, would be greatly appreciated.
Well, great. I've enjoyed being on, Sean, so thanks for having me.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to. I say, what's the problem is the thing that every Bitcoiner in the world can just have in their pocket, because it doesn't even talk about, it doesn't mention the word Bitcoin for over half an hour, because it's a Bitcoin video without being about Bitcoin. It's about understanding why we need Bitcoin. Because unless anybody understands, no one can value a solution unless they understand what the problem is. And everybody intuitively knows there's a problem. They just They just haven't had it explained to them. They just don't have the map in their head. They see all the consequences around them, but they don't have a way of tying that back to what actually caused the series of issues they see in their own lives. And so you can share it with anybody of any age, any background, sex, race, religion, political leaning, doesn't matter. There's no sharp edges in it whatsoever. Everyone can watch it, and then after 30 minutes, they understand why we need Bitcoin. It's a separation of money and state. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot watch it and not arrive at that conclusion. So we just need everyone in the world to watch it. And so if the people in your lives, or even just like people you meet randomly, if they talk about any problems at all in their life, you go, I've got a video you should watch. Just send it to them.
Yeah.
Right? Because the chances are the problem that they're talking about is because of the money printer. Right? And so yeah, please just share it with everyone. And then, I cannot tell you, Sean, the number of conversations I've had with people who've come up to me and said, the video, thank you for making it. It helped my mum or dad or sister or my entire family now understand why I care so much about this thing. Right? And they now are asking me to send them stuff. Right? Rather than me posting links on WhatsApp that no one ever replies to. Because it's just, people are then motivated. They're motivated to understand more because they understand why. Right?
Yeah.
For the very first time, they'll have a mental framework of the world where they can slot Bitcoin in and be like, I get it now. I get why this thing is important. And so, yeah, please just, if you haven't watched it, please watch it. If you have, please just share it with as many people as you can. We've got a lot of people we need to get through. And Sean, to your point earlier, Sean, these are probably the most crucial 2 or 3 years, or maybe less, that we're going to have to try and save as many people as possible.
No, thank you so much, Joe, for making it. At the end of every show, I always say, please do something nice for yourself today and for somebody else out there. Be blessed. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, a nice thing you could do for somebody else is just share what's the problem. It's so easy. It's going to cost you nothing. Please just share it. I've put Joe's links below. You can get on his website. There's a presentation that you can get in contact with Joe as well to be able to share, to be able to educate groups and stuff. Otherwise on X. Yeah. Do you have anything, final thoughts that you want to add before we
just one
head
thing,
off?
if that's all right, Sean. So since launching the video, there have been hundreds and hundreds of Bitcoiners from around the world have been in touch. So the idea with the video is you can share the video. That's great. If you want to go and do the presentation yourself, or use it in your materials, or help others wherever you are in the world, you are absolutely free to do so. All the materials are on the website in more than 30 languages.
Wow.
So all the slide decks, the slide deck in the video in 30 different languages done by Bitcoiners from around the world, all the speaker notes and the transcript all fully translated. And so they're there. Just help yourself. Take them, go and host an evening, invite your friends around, do the presentation to them in person. This is a decentralized effort to try and educate the world as to what needs to be fixed so we can fix the world. And so please just help yourself.
I'm going to do that locally. A couple of people have asked me to speak a couple of times, and I have, but I think to have that slide deck is just going to be valuable. Last time I did it, I'm not sure why I didn't really think about that, because I'd seen the video and knew that was available. But ladies and gentlemen, take Joe up on that offer, and please, again, do something nice for yourself today, for somebody else out there. Be blessed. Peace.